Oh, we're back again. Hello, hello, hello. Nice to see you, or nice for you to see me. I can't see you. But I'm going to finish up on the Mormons. As you know, my series on the splintering of the church, starting with the Reformation, and I talked a lot about Martin Luther and how he started the Reformation, and then following up on all these other groups that came out of that splintering, which is many. Some would say 21,000 different splinter groups from the original Catholic Church, not counting the Orthodox. However, the Orthodox are very much the same as us, even to the extent that we can go to their churches and receive communion in the same community as we can get in the Catholic Church. But anyway, so I've gone down the line of different churches, and now I've come to the Mormons. And the reason I mention the Mormons is that we see them. They come to the door. I don't know how many of you have had a Mormon visit. Or it's usually two young men, nice guys, really nice, clean cut, white shirt, tie, dark pants, very polite. Really, really nice and disarming, just really charming, nice kids. And so that leads me to say Mormons tend to be very nice people, and good neighbors. They'll do things for other people. They have a sense of responsibility to the brothers and sisters. Even if they're not Mormons, they'll still be very kind to everybody. They're good people to have in the neighborhood. You can rely on them. However, we'll also have to be straightforward and honest about some things, because the Book of Mormon says that the Catholic Church was invented by Satan in the year 100. So they believe that the Catholic Church is satanic. And they also believe that the Protestant churches that came out of the Catholic Church are also an abomination, the spawn of the devil and so forth. And the Protestants don't like that, nor do we like that to be called demonic, because we believe that the Catholic Church was actually founded by Jesus himself. So I think Jesus would be a little offended by that too. So that's an issue. And then also, they're very good proselytizers or evangelists. They have something like 40,000 missionaries in the field. And that's more than all Protestant groups together. They have more missionaries. And 75% of all Mormons are former Catholics. And a part of that is because they proselytize or evangelize, I should say evangelize, that sounds nicer, in the Philippines, in the Central and South America, places that the population is heavily Catholic to start. So that's why former Catholics become Mormons. I did saw on YouTube that the Mormons are also trying to evangelize the Amish, of all people. And so Amish are becoming Mormons as well. And the Amish are good people too, so that's a good mix for them. They're very nice people. So what I started with last time was the environment out of which Joseph Smith grew up. Joseph Smith is the founder of the Mormon Church, and he grew up in upstate New York in a town called Palmyra, which is very short distance from Rochester, New York. And in those days, now the Smith family was in New England in the 1600s, so they were very early immigrants. But Joseph Smith grew up in the 1800s, a couple hundred years later, even after the Revolutionary War. And that was a very interesting era. There were a lot of new religions being developed. A lot of these new religions grew up in the United States. New founders started new churches. One was Anne Sullivan, I think her name was, and she was claimed to be the incarnation of God. Just like Jesus is, she was the feminine form of the incarnation. And she started the Shakers. I don't know if you ever heard of the Shakers. They had the famous Shaker furniture and all. So it was a very mixed environment. His mother was a Presbyterian, very well educated, wrote a book, actually a book of the life of Joseph Smith. She wrote a book. It's not the same as what the Mormons say, but it's similar. And his father was not very successful. Most of the Smiths were very well off farmers and successful, but Joseph Smith Sr., Joseph Smith Jr.'s dad, was not successful. They moved something like 8 times, more or less. I don't remember the exact number of times, because they just couldn't make a living. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't a lazy person or anything. Bad crops, bad weather, all kinds of reverses in his circumstances. So, but he was not a Presbyterian. He was a seeker. They call them seekers. And he was interested in finding out what other groups are not telling, because there are a lot of strange groups. There are the Oneidas. Have you ever heard of Oneida silverware and so forth? They were a communistic group with a wife swapping group, more or less. And so there were a lot of strange things developing. And so Joseph Smith then lived across the road from what we call, if you go to Palmyra, you'll see the house he lived in, very nicely done. It's kind of like a shrine. And also the Sacred Grove, just across the road from the house. And he went into the Sacred Grove, and God the Father appeared to him in a beam of light. Now, that was in 1822, I think, or 20. And he reported it not until 1840. Different. And each time he reported it was somewhat different. First it was the Father, second time it was the Son, the third time it was angels. So he didn't really get his story straight, or he forgot what he said. I don't know, but anyway, that's very significant, because that's the event that Mormons will tell you about when they visit your home. They have beautiful pictures of that. You know, he's just a kid, a teenager, good-looking kid in a beautiful grove with trees and this light coming down. And that's significant because Joseph Smith is then a prophet. God talks to him. And that's been an element of the Mormon Church ever since. They have a prophet. And the prophet then talks to God, and they get an ongoing guidance from God himself. And it's also convenient because when things don't work out for the Mormons, they tend to change their faith. So discussing these issues of faith with a Mormon is like, do you remember when they used to let us touch mercury? Don't do it. It's really poisonous, but I remember as a kid breaking a thermometer and playing with the mercury. That's why I'm kind of brain dead. And so, because mercury gets into your brain, so it's very dangerous. But anyway, have you ever tried to pick it up? It won't go anywhere. And that's what it's like trying to discuss issues with LDS, Latter-day Saints, because it's a changeable religion. Famous cases is they used to teach that the polygamy was necessary, that God ordered the Mormons to practice polygamy, more than one wife. But out in Utah, it became a federal offense. And so they were under the gun of persecution by the government. So the prophet got a message from God that they no longer believed in polygamy. So if you talk to a Mormon, say, do you guys believe in polygamy? They'll say, no, we don't believe that. Not at all. And they don't, because they abandoned it. There are some groups in Utah that do. They have their own prophets, and they say their prophet is saying, go ahead and do it. So another case was that blacks were not allowed to join the Mormon priesthood, and that they got a prophet saying, no, that's not church policy anymore. And so now blacks can join the priesthood. So it's it's a very good selling point for people who want to have direct contact with God through their church. On the other hand, it feels like a convenient way to change the church when the church is not as believable as it used to be. And so, again, nice people, but we have to state the facts. We're losing Catholics to Mormons, and they're saying our church is demonic. So we have to respond to that. And so the prophetic side of it is very different in Catholic theology, in that we believe that doctrines can grow as we get more understanding of it, but it can't change. It can't be an introduction of a whole different world. You see, to Catholics, a doctrine is, in the beginning, is like a baby that grows into the man, but the man is still in continuity with the same person that the baby is. Or they use the example of acorn becomes the oak tree, but everything in the acorn is what the oak tree ends up being. And so another doctrine that they have changed is Joseph Smith at one time, and they don't believe this anymore at all. You ask them, we don't believe that. And that was Adam was the Son of God, that Adam was God. Not the Son of God, Adam was God, because they believed that when a man dies, or they used to believe, see, everything used to be, so I think they still believe this. When a man dies, he will go to his own planet and he will become a god. That means that everybody, interesting as men will become gods. So I don't know why the women haven't protested yet, but and I shouldn't be flippant, because it's a serious religion, and we can hurt people's feelings if we mock the church. So I don't want to do that. But nonetheless, it was Koloth was the planet he was on, and he came to Earth and was the god of this earth. He became a god. So, but the Book of Mormon, as like Nephi and other places, says there's only one God. So that's an argument that I like to take with Mormon visitors, is let's look in the Book of Mormon. By the way, many Mormons do not actually read the Book of Mormon or the Pearl of Great Price, the Covenants, and what is it? I forget the name of the other one. There are four of them. A lot of them don't read that. But the thing is that they go to another planet or come from another planet, and then they become God, and they say Adam. Joseph Smith used to teach that God that we know, was Adam from another planet. So Koloth. And by the way, Koloth is similar to a Hebrew word. Joseph Smith knew a little bit of Hebrew, and so what he did is, what is Koloth in Hebrew? It's dog. So Koloth is near the dog star in the sky, and so now on Koloth, where he had two sons in this, I don't know if they believe this anymore as well. He had two sons, and one was Jesus, and they were going to go to earth, but they needed to save the people of the earth, and Jesus said he would die for them and save them. But his brother, Satan, see, now to them, Jesus' brother was Satan, said, no, we'll just take their free will and they'll make them do it. But God, Adam, liked Jesus' plan better, and so, but when they came to Jerusalem, and again, this is very confusing, because the Book of Mormon is supposed to be written by Mormon. There was a man, Mormon, early on when they came to the New World, and his son, who became an angel, was Moroni, and they said that there were different groups and that went to war with each other, and one of them was dark, and so the followers of Satan in this other story, they're black. And they believe that if you are faithful to the Mormon church as black, then eventually you'll lose your blackness and become white. And so, again, that is pretty much a racist attitude now. So my guess is they're not going to believe that, or they're not going to mention that much anymore. And so, so we have this marvelous religion based in Salt Lake City and Independence, Missouri. See, there are different groups of Mormons. The big group is the LDS, Latter-day Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City, headquartered in Salt Lake City, is the largest group. But there's another group, it's called the Reorganized, and that group was started by Emma, Joseph Smith's wife, and son, Joseph Smith III. And they don't believe the same things. And as a matter of fact, Mormonism not only changed their teachings because of prophecy, they changed the Book of Mormon 3,997 times, I think. And if you don't believe that, you can get an original Book of Mormon from this reorganized church because they kept the original copies. And so you can compare the new with the old, and you can see the many changes that were made in their writings. And so again, it's a religion that changes. They have a different perspective on theology and on doctrine that we Catholics do not have. And so so that's the other group. And then there are other splinter groups that still practice polygamy, but they're in hiding more or less in very small communities in Utah and Arizona and so forth in the West. So there's some problems I want to talk about in terms. Now, you don't want to bring these things up to Mormons because it gets you nowhere and it hurts their feelings. So, but just for a matter of information, one is that Joseph Smith ran into a traveling salesman who was selling Egyptian mummies. Get your mummy. Come everybody, and buy a mummy. And he was always interested in stuff like that. So he bought him a papyrus manuscript, and he looked through his peepstone. Have I talked about the peepstones? He would look into his peepstone, and he'd be able to read these golden plates to write the Book of Mormon. Well, he looked through the peepstone to this papyri, and he announced that it was actually signed and authorized by Abraham himself. And it taught the importance of polygamy, because, Abraham practiced polygamy, and Moses, that was also authorized by Moses. And so, but it went missing. And so they would say it probably went to Chicago and was burned in the Great Chicago Fire. But there was good news and bad news. They found the papyrus, and on the back of it was written, property of Joseph Smith. So the good news is they found it. The bad news is they found it. That is, now we could read Egyptian hieroglyphics. That's been developed. And it was actually just a copy of the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. They used to put those copies in the coffins of the deceased. It's sort of like years ago, Catholics used to put a rosary in a relative's coffin. We don't do that much anymore, but that's where it comes from. And there's nothing about polygamy or anything in there. So that they don't talk about that anymore. Joseph Smith would just kind of forgot about it. Another embarrassment is, and again, you don't need to bring that up because it doesn't take you anywhere. is that Joseph Smith is considered a martyr for the faith. And what happened was he was practicing polygamy, and another Mormon by the name of William Law wanted to pray. He was saying, if Joseph Smith can practice polygamy, I want a bunch of wives too.